Thank you so much for joining me. I am Chudney Ross. I'm the owner of Books and Cookies. I am the chief kid officer at the Jane Club. I wrote a children's book. But most importantly, I'm a mom. I think that everything I do is sort of juggling around mom life now. My necklace says mom. I have a hat that says mom life. So that's just sort of me in this stage of life. And I love it. And even though it's crazy. And I'm so happy to be joined with my friend Sara today.
And I'm so happy to be here. I'm Sara Haley. I am best known as a pre and postnatal exercise specialist. But like Chudney, I am most importantly a mom of 4. My kids are 10 and 7 and 4. And I don't know, our little ones have like birthdays within days of each other. Are they 19 months now or 20 months? I don't even know how old they are now.
I know, and I can barely handle 2 kids. I have this one the same age as your oldest and one the same age as your youngest, but you have 2 in between. It's amazing and it's inspiring, and I'm excited about this conversation today. It's so fun that we're both contributing to By Heart. By Heart is facilitating these awesome conversations on cluster because there are so many journeys to baby, and being a mom over 40, such as we are, is a distinct journey in itself and a really fun one. And it comes with its own specific joys and challenges. So that is what we're talking about today.
So fun. And you know what's interesting? I've been thinking about this since I knew this conversation was coming, which is you and I both had babies in our 30s, and then we had babies in our 40s. So I tend to compare the two and think it's an age game. But I always think, like, if I'd only had babies in my 40s, would I know any different?
Yeah.
Right? It would just be what it is. I don't think I'd be comparing it.
I think because I was late, I'm older than you. So I was late 30s with Callaway already. So I'm mid 40s now. And I don't compare my experience by my age. I just think mostly what I see is people's response to hearing my age. And
right.
It's flattering, but it's kind of a backhand compliment.
Oh, I would totally agree.
Wow, you're 40 with a baby. And so mostly that is what I compare. No one did that when I was mid to late 30s with Callaway. So that's an interesting experience. Do you experience that? Or with
do people and I think it's just when people ask me, right? When people ask me like, oh, what's it like to have a baby in your 40s? I'm like, well, I only know what I know, which is my others were in my 30s. And Kira, I was also thinking, like, I had to go back and say, okay, how old was I with each of my kids? So I had Landon, who's my oldest. I turned 33 shortly after I had him. And then Liam, I turned 36 shortly after that. Kira, I turned 39, which is basically 40. And then with Colin, my youngest, I was 41, right? So I'll be 43 here very, very soon. So I can say that like my last 2 were much harder than my first 2, from like trying to get pregnant to the pregnancy itself, the pregnancy itself, to postpartum recovery. Like all of those were harder. But again, is that because I was older? Is that because it was my 3rd and 4th kid? You know, and my uterus was just older and beat up more. I don't know. I don't know. I would love to like actually have that conversation too with somebody who just had their first baby in their 40s and say, like, did this feel hard to you? But all pregnancy is hard. So like, it's such a hard thing to actually pinpoint, was it my age or was it just that individual pregnancy? But yeah, but to answer your question, it depends on where I am in the United States.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I'm from Chicago. So when I go back to the Midwest, as I do every summer, and we'll hear very soon, most of my college friends, because I'm a graduate of the University of Illinois, have kids that are much older than mine. They're junior high or high school, even some of them. So I'm really my only college friend that's still like in this baby stage. Where here in California, you and I are in Santa Monica, it's not as unusual. So we have friends like you and I who are there, who have done it, and it doesn't feel as abnormal as I assume it also does on the East Coast.
Yeah. I have friends that are grandparents.
Wow.
Wild, but they had kids young, and then their kids had kids young, and now they are my age and grandparents. So I I also get it. It depends on where you are in the world. Here in LA, I feel like so many people are chasing their dreams, and so many families are starting having children later. And so it doesn't seem very abnormal until every once in a while. Everly finally made a friend, pandemic babies. She hasn't been around any other children. Luckily, she has a sister. Your kids are so lucky to have each other, even though they probably drive each other crazy. I mean, during this time, it's been so unique. So even though they're very different ages, they've got to play. But we met a baby and we were wearing masks, the mom and I, but chatting. And I said something about my age. And she was like, oh, you give me hope for having babies later in life. And I was like,
I've gotten that comment too.
I'm glad I'm giving you hope. I get it on Instagram all the time. And I do want to give people hope. It was challenging now that I've had a good pregnancy, an easy pregnancy, but the actual making a second baby was a challenge.
Right.
And that did have to do with my age. And I think young people out there should know that maybe you can freeze a couple eggs in case you want them down the line, because that was sort of where we ended up having the issue. But I had an easy pregnancy, just like with the first. I had a pretty good birth. I did throw my back out which is probably an age thing, because I thought that I could push this baby out the same way I did the first. And I had my legs up on these things and I was holding the stirrup thing, and your picture went away. You disappeared.
Well, I have my disturb thing on and it still looks like somebody's trying to call. So that's weird, but
you look beautiful in your picture. It popped up. Yes, I pinched a nerve in my back, which was probably an age thing too. But I know that people have different experiences, young, challenging experiences with birth or getting pregnant, younger and older. So though mine probably had to do with age, it didn't definitely happen.
It doesn't always, right? I had the same experience too. My first two, like I said, I was under 35 when I got pregnant with both of them, and so they were comparatively to my other two, they were easier to get pregnant with, and the last two were much more challenging. It took many tries with especially my daughter, my number 3, and sure, I could chalk that up to being over 35, but many people have miscarriages early on and in their 20s. So it doesn't always have to do with that.
Yeah, it doesn't. So do you have any wisdom that you've learned through your 4 babies that either has to do with your age or being a mom of 4, or ways that you parented as a wiser and older mother now than you may have at the beginning?
Well, I think everybody who probably has more than one child can relate to this, which is, with that first one, everything is just like you're on top of them and you're worried about everything. I am much less anxious than I was in my 30s. I let things go a lot more. Like there are plenty of times where I don't know where my 4th child is in my house, and he shouldn't be wandering around by himself. And yes, that's partly to do with there being so many of us, but also I think I'm just, I feel more comfortable. And I think that is definitely an age thing. I think just being comfortable in your parenting decisions, not caring what everybody thinks. I think that definitely comes with age, which is such a nice thing.
Yeah. I still stress a lot. No, I saw you posted on Instagram a video of the baby chewing on a tortilla chip, really young. And I was like, oh my God, do you know CPR?
I do. I'm a fitness professional.
I also know CPR, but I'm not sure I ever want to use it.
No, I don't either.
I actually think, and so though, yes, I don't care what people think. I'm like, this pandemic, my baby watched the TV. We got to do what we got to do, to be able to work and things. And so that I think is an age thing, really just being confident in yourself and your parenting choices, and knowing your kids are going to be okay, no matter whether, they're eating tortilla chips, or my only eats goldfish right now. She's really into goldfish. But I know that will grow out of that stage. She's strictly breast milk and goldfish. And so I know that, like, that confidence in just being a mom in those different stages. I think, though, I have a lot more fear with the baby because of the miscarriages. I think I have a little post-traumatic stress that,
Oh, for sure.
and she's alive and she's healthy and she's well, but I definitely have, I'm much more helicoptery with her than I think I was with my older one.
Oh, interesting.
And maybe it's a little bit of, the miscarriage fear, and also
Pandemic, I think.
I'm one to always find the silver lining in situations. And there was moments this past year that you just couldn't, and you just had to sit in that sadness and that fear, and find a place for that, and to process that in.
But also, don't you think such a great time to have a baby? Like everybody who messaged me and asked, like, I feel like I should hold off on getting pregnant because of the pandemic. And I agree, like, being pregnant during the pandemic, scary, but having an actual baby during the pandemic was life-saving.
Yeah.
I think that's why I didn't nurse any of my other kids as long as I've been nursing Colin. And I think so much of that is because it fills me up every morning. It's totally not about him. It's the best part of my day sometimes, because it's so soothing and so calming. And I just think that that's what the baby brought during the pandemic. Because, I mean, they were 4 months, right, when the shutdown happened. And I just kept thinking, thank goodness for this gift right now.
Yeah. And I agree, for everyone who had babies during this time, you are forced, when you first have a baby, to slow down and really focus on the baby. And this year has just given us so much more of that. Like, instead of us having to rush back to going to offices and work in that kind of way, being able to spend that time really just focused on family. And so that's been really, I do agree, that's been really special to have that time. And also for older siblings, for Callaway, she would have been at school. Now she got to really focus on being big sister and growing with her,
Yeah.
and watching her grow and being a part of that process in a very different way than she would have been able to experience otherwise.
Oh, for sure. On the flip side, with the age game, trust me, it's not that I don't have any anxiety. My husband sometimes calls me like a borderline hypochondriac. I think maybe for me, what's hardest about being an older mom is I worry more about my health now than I ever have. And I take it very seriously now, from mammograms to just basic diet, because I know I won't be around as long for his life. And I'll get emotional talking about it, but I won't be around for as long as his life as I will for my oldest. And that makes me sad. It makes me scared sometimes. And I don't think that's talked about enough, because it's kind of a blatant thing that we all know when we have a baby at an older age, is like, I may not meet his kids, right? I may not be able to be a grandparent to his kids. And I think that's probably the hardest thing for me as an older parent.
Yeah. My mom had my brothers in her 40s, and my mom is healthy and kicking, and a grandma too. And my little brothers have both, she married them both, they both have children, and she's been able to really experience and know them. But I do also understand and feel those fears, and definitely try to take care of myself, because want to be able to be that grandma. I want to be able to, I don't know that my girls will want me to marry them, but but I want to be able to experience their adult lives.
Yeah.
And we don't know what will happen, but I do try my best to take care of myself and be as healthy as possible, and do my mammograms and things like that.
Yeah. And I think that's, as a health and fitness professional, I always say to parents, like, if you don't want to make these choices for yourself personally, do them for your kids. Exercise, eat well, sleep well, sleep as much as you can when you can, but do all these things. If it's not you, then it's got to be for them and for being around for them
Yeah.
and being able to see all the special things that they're going to get to experience as well.
Now you're gonna make me sad.
It's just a reality. It's crazy. It's crazy to think about. But I mean, that could life is life. You don't know what life's going to throw you. So it's not always, again, not always an age game, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's see. Were there any surprises to being a mom over 40? Any things new and wild? I guess
Yeah. What about for you?
for me, I just think it's the juggle. Yeah, we also got a new puppy, just to add into
Oh, you got a pandemic dog.
For me, I guess, I was lucky enough to have this pandemic year to slow down and not be running around. But when Everly was first born, I just felt so much sadness for my older daughter, who's very independent and very mature, but we were so tight. And I just remember like those first few days where you're just really so exhausted still, and you have a baby stuck to your boob. And I could see Callaway in her room totally fine, playing independently, building with her Legos, happy. And I just cried and cried because it was this moment of, am I going to get to experience life with her in the same way? I have siblings. I would not want to live life without my siblings. It was so important for me. Obviously, I wasn't ready to have another baby for so long. And then when I was, it was more challenging. But I wanted that for her. I wanted it for me, but I wanted it for her mostly because I know what a special experience it is to have a sibling. But in those early moments, I was like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to give both of them so much love? And then obviously that had maybe some to do with just being exhausted and tired and just sitting home.
No, but I think that age in particular, right? She's 10 as well.
She's 9.
Oh, she's 9. Well, so Landon just turned 10, and I talk about this with my husband a lot because I do feel like I miss out on the most with him. I mean, my husband coaches him, and so my husband just gets a lot more time with him because he coaches him in all of his sports. And I do feel like, because I'm always tending to the younger ones, that I feel you so much on that. It's hard, and I think it's hard letting go of our babies that are growing up in front of our eyes, and they want that independence so much at the age that they're both at.
Yeah. I think that mostly, I guess, my shift and my learning was becoming a parent of 2, I think, more than with my age, but also just not caring as much what people think, that I was doing what was right for me. So sometimes I'm dragging, well, now more than during the pandemic, but right before, like, she was always strapped to me because I wanted her to be with me, but I was also driving my older daughter to dance and here and there and play dates. And, she had early on more colds than, luckily not COVID, but more colds than Callaway ever did, because we were home and just the 2 of us. But I wanted to still be able to experience that life with my older, and I knew that she'd be okay strapped to me. And then of course, life was not okay out in the real world. And so all that changed. But being able to travel with her and experience the world the same way that I so freely did with just one was important to me, and continues to be important to me as we also head out on our East Coast travels this time.
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest thing I noticed about being over 40 during the pregnancy too was just all the doctor things
Yeah.
that I didn't have to do earlier on. From even just all of my kids were about a week late, however you view the due date. And my OBGYN, who I'd had with both my number 2 and number 3, she was totally fine with me going over with the other ones, but she didn't want me going too far past the due date. So I pretty much tried to induce labor on my own with him to get him out a little bit early, which I was fortunately successful at. But I just remember thinking like, but I don't feel older. Like I kind of feel the same. Like, why does this have to happen? And
The
they
same,
have their numbers, and I can't even remember what her defense on that was, but
same thing happened with me. She was very clear that I couldn't go over my due date. And my first was 10 days late. And she was so casual about the late with the first. And it wasn't that much difference. We should talk about geriatric pregnancies. Like that name needs to change in the medical industry.
yes,
Because that just makes you feel, and I think at 35,
it's 35. Yeah, because my girlfriend's having a baby, or she's pregnant right now at 38, and she's like, "Why am I geriatric?"
and
Like,
you're young still. That's
yeah,
midlife. So
yeah.
yeah, but same thing. I was induced with my first because 10 days, she like was not coming out. She was holding on for dear life in there.
Mine too.
I was finally induced with the first, but then this one, I never got to experience a
Natural, like, yeah.
I had a plan. I had a plan with my first, at least. With my second, I did know that plan was likely not going to happen. But yeah, on my due date, she was like, if she's not out yet on your due date, she's got to come out. So
I think it has to do with the uterus and it just being, again, for lack of a better word, old uterus.
yeah,
And they just don't know, don't know how long it's gonna make it.
It's so sexy, a geriatric uterus.
Yeah, it definitely needs to change. But that I think was probably, and that's what's hard, right? Is like, I think that's hard. What's hard about aging in general, if you kind of have a young lifestyle and a young mindset, is unless I actually look at my face in the mirror, I don't feel I
Yeah.
don't feel 40 something.
Well, I guess, and maybe that's what needs to change. What does it mean to feel 40-ish something? I mean, I do remember my mom being in her 40s and thinking like she was a mom, and
Oh, right, and you're old, mom.
I think I'm pretty cool, but Callaway probably looks at me like that too. But I don't know what it means to feel 40. And
Well, I think it's changed. I do think it's changed. Like, right? They say, 40 is the new 30, etc.
well, I love that I had both of my children later in life because I really feel like I lived life. Like I lived life. I traveled and partied and danced on tables and all sorts of weird stuff. Rode moped
Right.
off into the beaches of Greece. I don't know. I lived life. I tried many careers before figuring out which one fit. I did weird jobs, I feel like I really lived life, which I think is why I can really focus on being my mom life right now.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed, there's parts of those moments that I miss, but at the same time, I'm not still searching for career and I'm not still searching for this and that because I've sort of explored all that. And so I really get to enjoy and focus on being mom right now. And I love that. And I know it's so short-lived because I look at Callaway and she was this tiny thing and now she's like tall. She got her ears pierced yesterday.
Oh my goodness.
So big girl.
Oh my goodness. My daughter's only 4, so I can't even imagine that yet. But no, I think the same thing. I actually got married, fairly young, again, depending on where you are in the world. My husband and I got married at 25, but we didn't even think about having kids till 32.
Yeah.
So I had 7 years of marriage before we even thought about having kids, and we were living in New York City. So it wasn't even when we thought about kids, people in New York City were like, wait, what? No, you don't need to do that yet. Come on. So I feel like,
really
and that's what's nice.
That's
yeah,
so
and it's
I've been married for so long. Before.
Yeah, and we got to travel. I haven't traveled a lot since having the kids, but I remember being pregnant with my oldest and being like, we went to Australia because we were like, what if we can never come back here? And with 4 kids, I don't think I'll be back anytime soon. So
that's a lot of seats. Although now you can buy your tickets now pretty cheap. I think now is the only time to be able to buy a full family seat. Yeah, we're trying to get in some travel before Everly's not a lap child anymore. Because even the coach, the 3 seats across, like you got to start splitting up the family. And it's so
yeah, well, now I'm all the way across. So and son of a gun, somehow there's always one seat that's separate. And so my husband like goes and sits alone and I'm with the kids like, oh, because I have to be still, right? I'm like, one day that's gonna be me by myself, and you can just sit with everyone.
One day the kids will sit all by themselves and you guys will sit in first class.
Yeah, exactly. Living the dream.
Yes, yes.
Oh,
Well,
this was so fun.
it was so fun. It was so nice to chat and catch up. And I don't know if we shared any words of wisdom about being over 40, but it's possible.
Yeah, you know what I always say? It's all hard, whether you have one kid or six kids, or you're in your 20s or you're in your 40s. It's all obviously amazing, but it's also all challenging. And I think it just each has its advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah. And always from my first to even now, and I know this has been hard for people during the pandemic, but my advice is always to find community. And it's so fun that Cluster is creating a community that we can be a part of to support new parents in all of their different avenues that people come into parenthood. And yes, I've found so much comfort in friends and people who are living the same experience as me. And
Well, and that might actually be some great advice. Is if you are going to be a new mom and you're over 40, whether it's in your area or online, I just search for groups of moms over 40, because they definitely exist if you're looking for camaraderie. Because it does help. I think it helps, like, knowing other moms who are going through the same thing at the same point in their life. It always makes it better.
yeah, I agree. Well, so fun. Thank you for joining me for this conversation, and
Thank you.
goodbye, Heart and Cluster.
Yes, thanks, my heart.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
I'll stop recording.